here is some solid advice for any game master that wants to be a public game master, meaning you're willing to open up your game to strangers, people you've never gamed before. You're willing to do that. Well, here is something, or here is an approach that you should take. Before you enter the public realm, know for sure, where you stand on things for your campaign, for your game. Like, are you going to say no to this? Are you open-minded to this? Whatever it is, make sure you know where you stand. Like, if a player comes to you and says, can I do this? Run that through your head. Can they make a unique character? Are you willing to have that group in your campaign, in the world, right? Like, decide where you're going to say no for sure and where you're going to be open-minded. So have that solid so you can communicate that clearly to any player that approaches you with any question when they're joining your game. Make sure the rules to your game, and what I mean is you might run whatever edition of D&D, Dungeons and Dragons, but you may have some host rules. You don't allow a certain class. You don't allow multi-classing. You don't allow this, or you do allow this unique thing that's not in the player's handbook. Whatever it is, make sure that stuff is really well communicated to your players. Remember, I'm talking to people that want to be a public game master. So let's go over it again right quick. So far, where we're at so far. Up front, know, where you're going to have your limits. Where you're going to say no to something. Know that for sure. Don't be on the fence, right? Know where you're going to be open-minded. Understand those areas. And be principled about these things. That means really be open-minded if you decide you're going to be open-minded. Don't become closed-minded to ideas if you're supposedly open-minded to whatever it is over here. And know for sure where you'll say, no, I won't allow that class or that thing or whatever. Like the solid know for sure stuff. Not just game rules, but in general, right? For the gaming world, for whatever. Then make sure that any unique adjustment to rules or add-ons or what have you, any unique approach to the way you apply rules, whatever, that's not directly in the book, that the players should know because they won't assume, they won't know this coming in. Make sure all that is communicated to any player playing your game. Before that first session, they should know. They should at least have the information offered to them in a solid way that they can access that information. What are your unique rules, right, to how you run whatever game you're running? Now, here is the best advice to save yourself a big headache, right? Because I know a lot of us are nerds, and when we get out into the world and somebody mentions that they want to do something that we might not totally agree with, or we might see as off, we'll argue the details, we'll unnecessarily blow things up. Don't try to win arguments with your players. Like, don't try to start an argument with your player. If your player comes to you and says, I might want to give up this character and make a different character. Maybe even a low-level character. And you're sitting there looking at the situation like, wow, that might be a little off. But is there anything in your rules where you'll say no or anything that they can't do this? That they can't, ask for this? Because realistically, what you want is a player who's going to remain in a campaign or whatever long adventure you got going on, and they need to keep coming back to the table, right? So, you have to look at the situation, especially when a player makes, an approach to you like this. Is there anything in your rules where you would say no? Well, here's what you can do instead of trying to start an argument and win an argument. Ask them, why? Like, why do you want to do this, right? Try to dig down into it and say, look, I'm not going to try to change your mind, but I do want you to give this a little bit more thought. Maybe you want them to think about it for a day or two and come back to you, but don't try to manipulate and control a player. Don't try to win an argument. Don't try to tell them that their idea is bad. All you need to do as a game master is know if that idea is acceptable, give them what the social contract you have, and if it's not, and if it is, that's a yes. You will let them do it. But maybe you don't want them just carelessly making a decision like that. Maybe you want to have a conversation like, do you think there's any flaws in what you're doing? Do question them a bit, get them to consider it, but tell them no matter what you say, even if you do a bit of pushback, at the end you tell them, if you want to do it, for sure, you come back to me tomorrow, and if you tell me for sure after thinking about this, that you really want to do this, I'll say yes. Look, here's the issue. We all look at the situation and we'll judge it from our experience. And we're looking at it going, man, that could lead to a bad road, to a bad path, right? That might not be the best character. Forget all that, right? Stop trying to think you can predict everything going forward. Because in tabletop role-playing game land, you can't really predict anything. You don't know who's going to love what, why some wacko thing turns out to be the best thing ever. You really don't know. And I've seen some really, really extremely intelligent guys in this hobby have their minds blown by the results of something being good that they could not see. They could not see how you could possibly get there as it being good. But then they get there and they're like, that was genuinely fucking good. Look, don't be a fool that says yes to everything. Have some principles. Say no to some things that are principles for the world, for the setting, for whatever you want to accomplish, right, on your end as a game master. Because this is how you take part in the game, by putting these unique ideas in. This is the world is your character, right? This is your agency. And players have their character and their agency as players. They have all that. And the way you really approach the game as, outside of what a player does, is by bringing your uniqueness, your unique approach to the game. And so you shouldn't be the same 5e DM as the next 5e DM, or the same, first edition AD&D DM as the next first edition AD&D DM, and so on. You should never be the same, right? Try to come with some uniqueness. Of course, you're going to use some similar unique ideas that are used by other people, but I mean, it's trying to make your own package, trying to come at this your own way. And don't worry if you're doing similar things to other people. Don't worry about none of that. Just really come at it whatever way suits you. And whatever that is, it should look different than the next person. Again, there may be similarities from one game master to another, right? But again, there's going to even be uniqueness within the uniqueness. Right? It's simple to say, he runs it like this and she runs it like this. Well, that's the same. But you get down into it and there's more nuance there. Right? There might be quality compared to non-quality versions of this technique. And the technique with a less quality person is going to seem like crap. But you give that same technique that would fail in their hands to another person, and that person is going to knock it out of the park. Right? So performance can be important. You never know how all this goes down. So know what you're going to be open to, and don't put limitations where you haven't put limitations. So do say yes where you can. Not to everything, but where you can, definitely do it. And do have, again, some solid areas where no, that's a principled, safe area that I'm going to hold to for the sake of achieving a goal or expressing something. That's all okay. And then make sure your unique rules are really well communicated to the players playing your game. Like, just make sure it's well communicated. It's on them to read the thing or what have you, but make sure it's really well communicated. That's it. Do those three things and really come at this in a serious way. Like, treat it like a job to a degree. Like, mentally, it's not really work. It's not meant to be that, but come at it in some, I take this serious way, and really let people see that you take the game serious. These are people that don't know you. And again, like I said recently, you can't get trust instantly from people. What you can do is influence them to at least think you might be competent. Right? So when they give you a chance, it's not just a normal chance, it's a good chance to prove that you are competent, right? Because you express it. So that's important. If you don't express it, again, that people can come in with a bias, and even under the circumstances that you start showing some, that you're capable. People might not see it if you're really not expressing it well. So take the game serious, come at it where you can say yes, and stick to principles. Players, especially strangers that don't know you, that will build up respect with players, that you can hold your ground on certain things, but be reasonable, be open, and show people that you're not a stickler on things by being true to what you say. If you are open-minded about that thing and a player comes to you, look, you let them. It'd be like a recent conversation I heard about it, a game where a player might be coming in with a lower level character into a game where there's some higher level characters. Well, that's not a big issue. You can make that work with any edition, any game, right? Especially with an experienced game master. You can definitely make that work. But if a higher level player says, to play with that new player, I want to make a new character to start with them in the same world, what have you. Well, if there's nothing in your rules that say you won't allow it, you got to tell your player, initially, I'll say yes. Again, you can always go, hey, I want you to think about it, ask them why they're doing it, go through that, ask them to take another 24 hours to consider, these things and come back to you. But guess what? If they want to do that, if they want to start the new character, you say yes. It doesn't mean the other way doesn't work, right? But don't worry about winning the argument. You're there to run a game and have your rules and do this. Make that a solid, for sure thing for players where they can trust you. That's really what you're building up. You winning an argument doesn't do anything for you. It's a waste of your time. Know where you're going to say no. Be open where you're going to be open. Anyway, for now, take care.